I'm going to start the, the panel discussion today. I have a very illustrious set of speakers with me today. Uh, this is the seventh forum of the Australia-India Education Researcher Forum, and it is facilitated by the Australia-India Institute. Today's topic is internationalization of higher education, and I am Varun Aggarwal. I am the co-founder of FAST and will moderate today's session. And we're looking forward to have a very exciting discussion, but also take audience questions. Uh, the purpose of this platform is to showcase research in education disciplines from both India and Australia. But more importantly, it is to explore opportunities for new research collaboration. So please keep this in mind as you are listening to everyone, because one of the outcomes we are looking from this forum is that it can foster new collaborations between people here on the panel or people who are attending between and from both the countries. Uh, so today's topic, as I said, is to think about STEM education and how STEM education is changing in this new digital age. Before I talk a little more about the topic, let me introduce the esteemed panel who's here with me. Let me start with Dr. Amy Kim, who's a lecturer in the School of Education and Professional Studies at Griffith University in Australia. And Dr. Kim actively engages in UNESCO's whole school approach to global citizenship education, serving as an expert consultant. Welcome, Dr. Kim. Dr. Astha Saxena, who's at the School of Education, Azim Premji University, Bhopal. She's worked extensively in the area of science education and looking at bioethics in her doctoral work. She publishes in the area of pedagogy of sciences, teacher education, environmental education, and bioethics. Welcome, Dr. Saxena, to this
Thank you
forum.
so much, Varun. Thank you so much. Yeah. Looking forward. Yeah.
Same here. Dr. Vinesh Chandra, who's an associate professor in the School of Teacher Education and Leadership at Queensland University of Technology, Australia. And he's led a number of projects and initiatives in the Indo-Pacific. Welcome, Vinesh. Looking forward to chat with you.
Hi, Varun. How are you?
Very well. Thank you. So, as I said, look, the topic today is shaping of STEM education and how it has changed over the years, become more interdisciplinary, become more applied. And with the same time, we have been also been more, now more thinking about ethical issues around education, as we have been thinking about all different areas, such as in AI, life sciences, and so on. Before I get to my panelists, I'll speak about three of my experiences where I've seen changes in STEM education happening. The first one comes from 2015, when I was at the company Aspiring Minds, which I co-founded, and we had a small AI research team. And one day we got this idea that how can we introduce AI to let's say fifth grade students, right? And we did this very interesting camp with around 8 to 10 students, where rather than teaching theory, we actually made them build an AI model themselves. And this might sound fancy that how are these kids building an AI model, but I'll take 2 minutes to explain how they work. What we did is that we gave them flashcards, where on each flashcard there was an image of a person, a student, their name, and their hobby. And there are these 32 flashcards where we asked them to say whether you'll make them a friend or not. So for all these 32 flashcards, all these kids wrote whether they'll make them a friend or not. And this created the data set for AI. And then they swapped these flashcards among each other. And then we said that, guys, why don't you just put this data now in an Excel, where you put the name of the person, the gender of the person, the hobby of the person, and whether the person made him or her a friend or not. Right? And they did that. And then we asked them to look at very, very simple things, as to say that, oh, do you think this person makes women friend more often than men? Or does this person make people who do outdoor activities friend more often otherwise? And they themselves, they designed features in AI. And ultimately, they made a very simple model where they would say, look, if the person is a female and does outdoor activities, this person will make a friend of his. And then they tested the accuracy of this model. So this is in some way the small experiment, which then became a 6 CSE paper, shows that how you can do the same thing in a very applied fashion. And interestingly, in the same experiment, we also asked them that can we put this data set online? So can you sign an ethic form for us, whether you want this data be disclosed or not, which taught them about another dimension of uh, of uh, of how science and tech is done today. So this is the first example I wanted to give as an icebreaker on thinking about how STEM education is changing. The second one came when I was, and this was earlier, when I was at MIT in 2005 to 7, and they had this introductory course 6.001, which every computer science student had to take at an undergrad level. And this course was called Structure and Interpretation of Computer Programs, a very theoretical course where they used to teach a language called Scheme, which maybe most of you have not even heard about what Scheme is. And it was, completely theoretical course. And when I was there, this course got renamed as Introduction to Computer Science and Programming in Python. And it got elements of actually making a robotic car by the end of the course, where kids are interacting with sensors and making the car move and so on. So a place like MIT, which is probably famous for doing theoretical work, thought that their undergrad degree now needs to reflect realities of becoming more applied. And the fundamental course which people have to do is not on understanding the structure of programming language, uh, but more on being able to apply it to real world problems. And the third example is a little different, but from my most recent experience at FAST, we've been trying to understand how to get more people interested in research. So we did a survey of students in undergrad education to understand that when STEM education is done in colleges and universities, how much of research exposure is given to students, and the numbers were striking. So we found out that if you see 75% of instructors don't discuss any research papers in their class, right? So students are doing STEM, but they really don't know how STEM happens, and they have really, and this is at undergrad level, right? So they have no clue that there's something called research papers, and only 25% said they had ever read a research paper in their 4 years of their bachelor's degree, even one, right? And when we even took a cut of the survey data on the top 50 colleges in the country, we only found that 37% had read a research paper. So with this background, where we are looking at more interdisciplinarity in science education, we are thinking about how to give them a broader exposure, and we are also thinking about how to introduce them to ethics. I'd like to now invite my speakers to briefly talk about their focus of their research in STEM education. What are the main themes and issues? And I may request them to, just take 2 minutes because, we have limited time and we want to cover a lot of work. So starting with you, Dr. Kim, tell us a little bit about your focus of your research in STEM education.
Thank you, Varun. And I'm gonna make sure that my talk is under 2 minutes. So in my STEM education research, I delve into cross-cultural and transdisciplinary approaches to teaching and learning. So what that means is that these approaches entail bringing together a diverse range of experts, not only from academia, but also from various public spheres and industry to tackle real-world challenges. So in this era marked by rapid digital advancement associated with the fourth industrial revolutions and globalization, we've heard it so many times, it's imperative for citizens to comprehend scientific knowledge for informed decision-making and effective problem solving. So I explore how cross-cultural and transdisciplinary approaches can pave the ways for foster what we term it as global digital citizenship through STEM education. So this includes studying how experts collaborate across diverse knowledge systems and technologies and necessary skill sets required for such collaboration. So currently I'm actively involved in research project where our team is spearheading transdisciplinary conversation and research for STEM education, inviting stakeholders to develop framework and policies together in Australia and Korea. So today's discussion with this Australia-India Institute opens up a new avenue for cross-cultural discourse. And then I'm really excited for this conversation today. Thank you.
We're also excited to talk more to you, Dr. Kim, about the topics which you mentioned. Aksha, would you like to go next?
Yeah, thank you so much, Varun, for the opportunity. And this is really a great opportunity for all of us to initiate this dialogue between Australia, India, research partnerships. And my area of research, particularly, is in the area of ethics in science and how these two disciplines interact and interweave with each other. And why is it important to include ethics in science? And vis-a-vis, I have some research questions also which I have researched upon during my doctoral work. Mainly, my research was in the area of understanding teachers' knowledge about these ethical issues, which I followed a framework of pedagogical content knowledge of science teachers, particularly. Because I was looking in the area of bioethics. So I took up some of the issues related to bioethics, for example, animal experimentation, genetically modified organisms, cloning, and in vitro fertilization. So these are some of the issues which have deep ethical concerns, and students and teachers are mostly unaware about it. And how to deal with them and transact them in the classroom is also a major issue. So my research focused on this area, and I have written quite a few articles and papers in this area as well. And also I am doing active research in the area of environmental education, because if we talk about sustainability, then we can link all these dots together: science, ethics, environment together to achieve those SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals. So I think ethics is very important, and it should be integrated within the science curriculum and the STEM curriculum. So that is about my research. I will talk more about it in further details. Yeah.
Thanks so much, Asta.
Thank
Dr.
you.
Chandra, love to hear a little bit from you.
Yeah. Thank you so much. My interest is, I'm very keen on practice, and so basically the idea is we have all these visions of this is how integrated STEM should manifest itself, in citizens or in once students get to university and so on and so forth. But my interest is how do we do this in classroom contexts. So in my work, I teach teachers. So we train teachers, both in-service and pre-service teachers. And one of the projects that I was recently involved in was a project that was sponsored by the Australian government through its aid program in Papua New Guinea. We worked with teachers in Papua New Guinea. And basically, despite COVID and all kinds of issues, they were in-service teachers. And we got them to think about STEM education, think about integrated STEM. And what's happened as a consequence is, as I said, my focus is on practice, but then I write and focus on the research that's based on the practice. And one of the things that is coming out hopefully soon is a book that focuses on how we delivered the training in Papua New Guinea. Now, that's one part of the research. How did we, as university academics, deliver the training? How did we upskill the teachers? But the other more significant part, where there are lots of gaps in the literature about integration and transdisciplinary approaches in STEM, is that there are very few examples. So one of the outcomes, which I feel very delighted about, is that it's got 18 stories, basically narratives of teachers. So this is what we taught them about STEM education. What are they doing in STEM education that is advancing the STEM agenda in their classrooms? And Papua New Guinea is one of those few countries in the world that has embraced STEM education. There is a STEM curriculum that they want implemented nationally. And it's so thrilling to see what they are doing. And that's what we have been working on for the past 3 years or so. But the book is certainly one of those outcomes. So my interest is essentially one of the interests. How do we make these things happen in classrooms?
Thanks, Vinay. No, very interesting areas of research. And one thing which came to my mind while listening to all of you is that one of the problems I see is that education research and education practice are quite disjoint. So the world keeps moving ahead in education research, but when you visit a typical school or college, you see very of those few practices being adopted. So it's very good to hear that the people I'm talking to here are actually involved in practice and bridging that gap. And we'll try to keep much of the conversation based on more examples and what is really happening on ground, which is informing research and how research is informing education. Quickly to all the attendees, please share any questions which you may have in the Q&A box while you're hearing this panel. We really want to make this interactive and be able to answer your questions. If you also have ideas for collaborative projects or questions like saying, hey, is this kind of work done in another country or done across countries, please put it in the box because I would like to insist again that one of the reasons of this forum is to be able to create broader collaboration in the ecosystem. With that, I'd like to come first to you, Vinesh. We all know that STEM education is changing, right? And picking on the point which you said, right? Can you tell us what examples have you seen of these integrated models of STEM education in practice? What are the best practices today? What are the challenges which you see? So, as you said, right, it's very easy to say to make it holistic and integrated, but how does it really work on ground? And what have you really seen working, and what do you see as challenges?
Okay, I'll just start and I'll give you a bit of the background on STEM education and where we were and where we are now. So, for decades, stakeholders with a vested interest in education of future generations have talked about STEM education and why it is crucial. Now, proponents have often, they've framed the conversations around the need for citizens to be competent in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. The rationale was that a workforce that is qualified in STEM knowledge and skills could add significant value to a country's economy and prosperity. There are also good job opportunities for those who had good STEM knowledge and skills. However, over the years, the uptake of these subjects in schools and universities, particularly in the West, has declined. And I believe, and even if you look at the literature, the trend is often attributed to how STEM is taught in schools. And I think the example that you shared, Varun, at the start of your experiences, I think they highlight how STEM should be done. That is probably a good example of best practice. But anyway, I just want to share a quote that is often attributed to John Dewey. And what John Dewey said is, if we teach today's students as we taught yesterday's, we rob them of tomorrow. And I think it just makes so much sense. Now, I'll just sort of give you an example of my own context. I've got two granddaughters. Margot is 9, Gwenny is 6. Now, how they learn and how they gain knowledge is very different to how I learned and gained knowledge when I was their age. Now, when I put myself and I reflect on myself and say, well, where exactly was I when I was their age? I think I was pretty dumb. I feel that times have changed. They are a lot inquisitive. They always want to know why they are doing what they are doing. And I think knowing the times table is not enough. They want to know why they are learning the times table and how can they apply it in a real world context. Now, for us, we learned the times table so we could kind of, memorize, regurgitate, pass exams, and everyone looked up to us as good math students. Now, personally, I didn't know what the times table was in real world, but I knew what it was, like memorize. So many concepts in science STEM connect, yet the subjects are taught in silos. And I think you've kind of alluded to that point. And consequently, in many instances, students do not understand why they are learning what they are learning. And one of the ways to do this is by integrating STEM. So through such an approach, concepts can be applied to tackle real world projects, as again, you talked about problems, inquiries. The other very important thing is, I think, that students can apply their critical and creative thinking. That is very crucial this century. They can collaborate and they communicate. And these are the four basic, I suppose, pillars of 21st century skills. And the idea of what I've just mentioned about integration is not new per se. I think the real thing is, if we go back to the 90s, the National Science Foundation in the US and the Committee on K to 12 Engineering Education highlighted that there was a need for integration. And I think the issue, the challenge that we have faced is how do we make this this happen in a school context? So I think whilst there is a lot of merit, if we look at the literature, one of the things the literature is sort of saying at the moment is that there are two key issues that need to be tackled so that integration becomes a possibility in the classrooms. And one is the training of teachers. And the second one is basically examples of how the training can be delivered. Hence the training of teachers and examples of how such an approach impacts on teachers' work. So I think those are two very significant parts. And I think, again, with the STEM agenda, those are two challenges. And I think if I go to the example that I shared with you earlier, the book that we are working on, and the teachers that we work with. Now, often we talked about STEM education, about integration. People talk about, gee, all these fancy tools and devices. Realistically, you don't need anything fancy to bring about integration. And this is what the teachers in Papua New Guinea are teaching us. And likewise, in the context in India, for example, there are so many local problems that you can contextualize. So basically, if we are looking at the PNG teachers, they've targeted the delivery of their curriculum through integration. So basically looking at the math, science, and the technologies, how it comes together. But they've also targeted problems that align with the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. So it's just learning, not for the sake of achieving what the curriculum wants them to do, but it's looking at something big. For example, in PNG, one of the real issues is access to clean water. And some of the work, and that, if you look at the United Nations Sustainable Development Goal, I think it's number 2 or number 3, it's one of these goals where we want to ensure that everyone gets clean and fresh water, and I think that when students learn about, devising engineering systems that can deliver clean water, they look at science to test the purity of the water, they're learning about purity, they're learning about microbes, they're learning about engineering systems, but at the same time, through that, their learning has a purpose. And as a consequence, it's delivering an outcome. So that is where I think I might stop for the moment. And yeah, do you have any further questions on that? Or?
No, Vinay, this was very, very good. I just would want to ask you, and the example which you gave at the end was very, very interesting. Where do you see some of the challenges when such content is being delivered? I understand you talked about training of teachers and giving examples of how it should be done. After that, do you still see that success for these things is impeded? Are there some factors due to which it doesn't happen? Or do you think that with these interventions, we can make it work?
I think firstly, we have to win the teachers. And I think, again, being a granddad, I used to go work with go in a kindergarten and do activities with my granddaughters. And I found that the best STEM happens in a kindergarten where there's none of these barriers. I'm not building this truck because I want to be an engineer. I'm just building a truck. But somehow, as we move up the ladder, we start putting children in these different disciplines. And then as we move further up, by the time we get to university, it's just become this very narrow tunnel through which we are graduating students. But then they come out in the real world. The issue is that we don't think in silos in the real world. We don't think, oh, gee, I really want to think about fractions this morning, so I'm going to cut an apple and see how I get 3 pieces out of it. We look at the problem, then apply our knowledge. And I think that if we can win teachers, now we are doing work We've got training packages that have worked very effectively. As I said, in Papua New Guinea, in the Philippines, we are working in a number of other different places, including Australia. I feel that we need to get teachers, and I think pre-service teachers, teacher training, and of course the other one is in-service teacher training. And most times I think, you know, in the primary school, the one teacher will teach across all subjects, so integration becomes a real possibility. But as you move up, as you go in the high school, there's a maths teacher, there's a physics teacher, everyone's sort of guarding their own territories. And I used to be a maths science teacher. In a maths class, I'll be a maths teacher. I had different personalities. In a science class, I'll be a science teacher. Even though drawing graphs in maths is so relevant in science, I never really got the opportunity to bring the two together because I think we are very disciplined, very silo focused. So I feel that that those are challenges, but it can be done. And I think if we can get education systems on side, if we can get school principals on side, you know, things can be done. And start small, you know, get these champion teachers and see how things progress.
So, no, that's very useful, Vinesh. So it's about winning the teachers. This is a good segue to you, Amy, because it's not only about the teachers, right? So when we have to do this integrated interdisciplinary education, we need to bring multiple stakeholders together, be it the industry, be it the local community, be it the public, and so on. And as you were mentioning, you have done some very interesting work in getting these people together towards both interdisciplinary research and education. So it would be great if you can talk a little bit about that work.
Good question, Varun. Nice segue. And I guess reflecting from what Vinesh just said, you know, the best practice of teaching STEM in this integrated manner is that we need to reflect that in our real society, the real issue, we need this interdisciplinary, transdisciplinary thinking to solve it, right? So the essence really lies in understanding why we embrace such approach and how it benefits not only teachers or students in classroom, but in society as well. You know, how do scientists actually work, engineers actually work, mathematician or data science actually work in their industry and society in this interdisciplinary and transdisciplinary manner to solve a problem or imagine a better future together. So consider two different scenarios in my approach. First is very localized challenge. So like evolving soil health crisis faced by farmer in Bangladesh due to climate shift. So this case demands a transdisciplinary collaboration. So one of the project that I'm engaged in, we have a team made up of local farmers, extension agents, researchers from scientists and social science, government representative from both Australia, Bangladesh, to actively crafting a farmer-centric soil health framework. So this incorporates not only modern ecological knowledge, but also deeply rooted in local wisdom. So in my role as an education consultant, I act as a bridge to ensure the cross-cultural communication and facilitating co-design process with the farmers as well as the scientists. And such approach actually comes with the many of education programs that I worked in across Indigenous communities in Canada and Australia. We have a very similar transdisciplinary model. So I guess it goes back to similar to Varun, what you mentioned as AI activities too, as well as finishes what you mentioned as Papua New Guinea's situation as well. You know, collaboration, school teachers and community members, but then really situate in specific, exploring local problems, like Finish's examples in Papua New Guinea. But then there's other approaches too, you know, really looking at more global perspective in reimagining future. So not specific towards a local site, but maybe imagining collective vision as a global society. I can tell you more about it later. I know I'm running out of time, but some of the specific strategies that we have used is methodology, something called as Cafe Delphi. It's a Delphi study, maybe you might know, it's expert communities coming together to share their ideas, but Cafe Delphi is more incorporating both quantitative, qualitative manner So it creates a dynamic platform for structured discussion among its diverse stakeholders. Also, a backcasting approach that's been used by sustainable studies a lot, where we look at our situation now and then collectively imagine strategies for futures together. So these are some of the tools and methods that I use in fostering transdisciplinary partnership.
Very interesting, Amy. And I think such tools can really help scale some of these efforts, right? Because it kind of creates a playbook which others can also use. And one thing I think what I've learned from both hearing you and Dinesh is that the context is very important, right, of what is being done. So if you can give them a context and join it either with a local issue or of something which the student would be interested in it, learning starts happening. Let me, ask a little bit of a different question. We are in an increasingly digital world, right? And that's a reality which we cannot ignore. And in fact, it's not something we should ignore, but we should dwell on. So what are your thoughts on how we can create global digital citizens through STEM education?
That is a very insightful question, Varun, and very high level. I am going to do my bestest to answer this in coherent manner possible. But if you have any question further, I can also always answer. So in the context of Australian schools are gearing up to integrate digital literacy by 2026, so in 3 years. So just as Vinesh mentioned, that science is not only to prep students for the job market, but to be active citizens. So as the digital skills, it's not only needed for the jobs, but also essential for being active and informed citizen in this era. So our research team delves deeply into fostering global digital citizenship through STEM education, focusing on 4 key pillars. First is digital technology, and second is digital literacy. Third is data literacy, and fourth is global citizenship element. So let me break this down a little bit. So digital technology, this pillar is involving teaching people how to work with various technological tools. Varun, you mentioned coding, programming language, diverse analysis tool, or AI, or virtual reality sets, because STEM education can really provide a ground not only for learning about these technologies, but providing hands-on engagement and experimental experiences. And we keep talking about this practice-based learning, not only theory, actually doing things. So this practical experience equip individuals to leverage these digital tools effectively, not only within classroom, but also in line with practices in the STEM industries as well. So second pillar is digital literacy. So beyond this technical proficiency we just talked about, programming language and such, digital literacy really focuses on broader understanding of digital platform, communication, critical thinking in the digital space. So our research delves into how STEM education can instill these vital skills. It's really aligning with social scientific issues that we just talked about, whether it be climate changes or COVID-19 vaccines or any other ethical issues that arises from generative AI, and where students see the direct relevance of their digital literacy skills in addressing real-world challenges. We're halfway there. Third, data literacy. Of course, with the digital platform, we are filled with information. So it's crucial not just to consume data, but to understand, analyze, and interpret it. And then this empowers individuals to make informed decisions regardless of their field of expertise. And our work really explores how, again, STEM education can lay the foundation for this robust data literacy, so enabling individuals to navigate this data-rich landscapes. So again, this is just not about classroom, it's about connecting with what students already encounter. Just reviewing Google data review, that could be data too in their daily lives, so bridging that theory into practice with their daily life encounters as well. And the final pillar is actually at my heart, global citizenship education. It's it's really about understanding diverse cultures, perspective, and sense of responsibility towards global community. So Vinesh just mentioned about Papua New Guinea's case where they look at the local problem, but linking it to UN's Sustainable Development Goal. That could be an example of global citizenship education. But here, our research really takes a unique approach. We've found that cross-cultural and again, transdisciplinary approach to STEM education is incredibly effective in nurturing this global mindset for students. So by integrating different knowledge systems, local indigenous knowledge to modern scientific knowledge and technology, we are preparing students for this citizenship mindset for the digital landscape. Again, we keep talking about the importance of research and the theory. So this journey involves actual research and program development, right? So currently, our Korea-Australia project is at the cafe and backcasting approaches stage, one that I mentioned earlier, developing framework for what that actually looks like in both Australia and Korea school context and curriculum context, and developing further programs for integrative STEAM programs through co-design in collaboration with these diverse stakeholders. Did I speak too long? Hopefully not.
Not at all, not at all. No, thanks. That was very useful, Amy, and some of these frameworks, as I said earlier, with the pillars are very useful for people to think and remember about some of these things. I'll move next to Astha, but I have a question in the question bank which I'll let the speakers know about so that they can think about it when we come back to questions. It's from Ujjwal Krishna, and he says, how can meaningful networks and communities of PhD students be created and strengthened to break silos from both within and across disciplines, right? So I think it's the PhD student lens on breaking these silos. I think it was a very, very interesting question because these PhD students going to become researchers and teachers. So I leave it for you guys to think about it and come back. But given that we are having this very, very rich discussion, right, about STEM education, and after, as it becomes more real world, more applied, more transdisciplinary, the issue of ethics in my mind gets even more amplified, right? Because earlier you were like a little further away from reality and reading theory. And now there's a big human element to science education itself. And I know that you have seen it in a subject which is full of human elements, right? Because of its very nature, biology and life sciences. So tell us a little bit about ethics and considerations of ethics in STEM, and what did you find out, both from the point of your textbook, how teachers do it, and how it should be.
Sure. Thank you so much for that question. And I know this question of ethics comes time and again. And initially, since our country and other countries were also like going through the Industrial Revolution, so science and technology became so important and so pertinent, so much pertinent for all of us that we were just avoiding this question and sidelining this away. But the thing is that, when we go about, when we try to discover new technologies, then this question of ethics is also there, and it is inevitable that it has to be addressed. So in my research also, initially I faced a lot of arguments against ethics, that why do you want to include ethics in science? Because scientists even, they say that science is amoral and science does not have an ethical element. It is completely objective. But we have found, and I have seen papers, not just from the philosophers and science researchers, but also some of the scientists also claim that, yeah, ethics should be a part of science. So there is a divided group of scientists, one who say that no, ethics should not be made a part of science, and the other who say that no, ethics should be a part of science and its processes. So I want to quote here one philosopher of science called Bernard Rollin, and in his book Science and Ethics, he has quoted, I quote, as a human activity embedded in a context of culture and addressed to real human problems, science cannot possibly be value-free or even ethics-free, quote unquote. So here we can see that science is a human activity, and we cannot deny that it is a human activity. And when we talk about issues at the interface of science, technology, and society, and also socio-scientific issues, which Amy just mentioned. So here we can see this ethical element coming up. So I want to say that science and scientific research is not objective always. It is subjective in nature because it gets influenced by researchers' biases, their backgrounds, their values, and belief systems. So, and this kind of, and the kind of scientific research which gets funded, that's also an ethical question, that what kind of research is getting funded. Okay, so are we funding research more on tuberculosis and cancer as compared to other researches? So why so much focus is there on these two diseases and not on other diseases? So if we think like this, then we will discover there are many ethical questions which get unanswered. And scientists always claim that the discovery of pure knowledge. But what happens when it comes to the application of this knowledge? So scientists say that we have created this technology, or we have discovered this drug or medicine. So what is the application of it? How are the people going to use it, or how the further technological innovation will take place? They are not addressing those concerns. They say that they are only working for the sake of knowledge and pure knowledge. So, can scientists be really held responsible if anything goes wrong or results in some destructive outcome? So, this is also an ethical question. Ethics, there are two kinds of values which we talk about in science: epistemic and non epistemic values. So, here in my research, I have focused more on the non epistemic values because ethics comes under the domain of non epistemic values. So here, it is not going to impact directly on the research, but it is going to impact on the kind of outcomes it will have. Okay, and how much validity will those outcome have in the society, and what kind of impact it will have on the society and environment. So ethics, when we talk about ethics and science via socio-scientific issues, so here we find that many researchers have done a good amount of work in the area of SSI, and how they have discussed this question is also very important. They have done it in a very interdisciplinary way. So in the interdisciplinary way, we say that we are able to integrate ethics in science. And in my research, I have also adopted a similar kind of an approach, interdisciplinary approach to integrate ethics in science, wherein I have tried to look into the classrooms and the teachers' knowledge, and as well as the classroom discourses around these ethical issues. So in my research, I have focused on the bioethical issues because these are some of the issues which are, although talked about much in the among the people and among the researchers, but not so much in the classrooms and also in the textbooks. So somewhere they get sidelined. And I have found out some of the reasons also that why they get sidelined. So, but the real question is that, how do they arise? So I will take one example of one of the ethical issue, for example, the genetically modified crops. Okay, so why there was so much furor about genetically modified crops, that some people were against it and some people were in the favor of genetically modified crops. So there are arguments both in favor as well as against. So I would like to say a few arguments about genetically modified crops. For example, they say that arguments in favor of the crops say that it will help in resolving the issue of hunger in the developing countries like India. Okay, because they say the crop yield is more when it is genetically modified, because the crops become resistant to drought and other kind of bacterial infections. So that is the reason that the crop yield will be good, and it would also lead to habitat generation and protect the wildlife, because genetically modified crops require lesser area for their growth, and also it will help in greater resilience against the abiotic stresses that the crops usually face. However, there are arguments against the genetically modified crops as well. For example, scientists and researchers say that it would lead to alteration in nutritional status of the crop, and as a result, it can have unforeseen impact on the health of the consumer, which is not yet known. So, and there is an issue of food safety and security, and also it would lead to gene pollution and loss of biodiversity. So these are some of the arguments which are made by the people and by the science and the philosophers of science. and also the practitioners who are in the field, who are trying to understand the arguments and the beliefs about these crops. So how do we address this issue in the classroom? So right now what is happening is, in the classroom they just go by the textbook, especially when I talk about K-12 level. So the teachers are kind of addressing whatever is given in the textbook. So textbook for them is the real, is like a Bible. Okay, it's like they can't go beyond that. Okay, so some teachers do discuss some of the issues, but mostly and generally teachers only go by whatever arguments are given in the textbooks, and textbooks hardly mention these ethical arguments. And as a result, students only get to see the beneficial side of genetically modified technology or gene modification, and they are not able to see the ethical concerns surrounding them. I'm not saying that ethical concerns should be more highlighted, or they should, cover even the objectivity of science, or they should, disallow the growth of science and technology. But the thing is that, if we have to talk about responsible science, and so that science and technology does not lead to any disastrous, outcome, then these ethical concerns need to be addressed at least. And the students who are our budding researchers, so if they are like given this half-baked knowledge, then they will not even think about these ethical concerns, and they will just think that technology is all for the good. So here I have looked into some of the ethical frameworks also, that how to address these issues in the classroom. So I have looked into the three ethical frameworks: the virtue framework, the deontological, and the utilitarian. So I'll just talk briefly about them. Virtue framework talks about the values, that what is valued in science, and virtue is that doing good to others. So if we talk about virtue framework, then how science and scientific practice can do good to people. Okay, so what is the value in science? So that is being talked about. Deontological framework is talked about mainly by Kant, and we follow the Kantian principles here. Kant talks about the categorical imperative. So here, duty becomes more important, and it is that we should do as we want, as we wish to be done by. So it is like that we cannot just uh, keep on making new technologies and without having seen their impact on the society and the environment. And we should also see that what is right, what is ethically right, and what does the rule says, the law says. So that is also to be considered. And utilitarian framework, it is more about the consequences which the research will have on the larger society and environment. So utilitarian approach is about consequentialism, that how, what kind of consequences a particular research will have on the people, on the society, communities, and the environment. So following these three different ethical frameworks, I've tried to analyze the kind of arguments and discourses which happen in the classroom, and how the students and how the teachers are approaching these issues in the classroom. So at the K-12 level, as I just mentioned, that students and the teachers don't give much opportunity for these issues to come into the classroom. But at the undergrad level, I've seen that teachers do talk about these issues. And the difference in the two levels is that since at the undergrad level, there is more autonomy with the teacher. The teachers are more autonomous and there is no set curriculum. So they have just given some topics, but they are free to choose the kind of resources, the readings. So there is much more autonomy in the undergrad level as compared to the K-12 level. So, and similar thing goes with the assessment. These issues are not being assessed in the final assessment. So that is also one of the reasons that these issues are being sidelined from the curriculum. So, and yeah, so I think this is a very important aspect to be addressed. And time and now, I think, since people are writing and publishing more about this area, so I think some understanding will develop among the people. But still, I would like to say that, as Varun, you mentioned, that at the grassroots level, it is very important to reach out. And as I think Vinesh also mentioned, that reaching out to the grassroots level is very important.
So, no, that's
Yeah.
very helpful. Thanks, Asta. And I mean, given
Thank
the
you.
speed of science and tech progress, which has been mind-boggling, I
Right.
think the issue of ethics. It's interesting that everyone is struggling with it, right? I mean, from the higher echelons in parliament to, as you said, people on the ground. So I think it will be a big topic for the next few decades as S&T progress happens, and as early as we can give students, exposure to think of these topics from that lens, it will be helpful because there are very few people who are trained both in S&T and ethics, and this goes back to what Vinesh and Amy have been also talking about around the interdisciplinarity of it and the siloization of it. So in principle, it kind of brings all of this together. On a lighter note, I was also reminded of this satirical play called The Physicist, which has been written by a Swiss writer after World War II, where there are these three scientists who have made these world-changing discoveries, and to not get them out in the open, because it will make a few people very powerful, they actually impersonate as lunatics, right? So it's through this satire that this, education has been tried to given out. We just have 8 minutes left, so what I'll quickly do is take this one question which we had in the Q&A box, which was about breaking silos between PhD students towards interdisciplinary education/research, and then have some closing comments. Who would like to go first? Amy, would you like to go first on this one?
I was hoping for last, but I can go first. I don't know in which field too, because I guess some of the key themes that arose from our conversation today is that context matters, right? So even though we understand that interdisciplinary or transdisciplinary approach is beneficial, it's not for all contexts, right? So I would actually, I don't know which PhD research topic you're engaged in. Some topics, some knowledge is to be bounded in. In my belief, it's bounded in certain area. You cannot just force transdisciplinary approach just for the sake of doing it. So, but if your topic actually is engaged in, solving a real life problems or real life issues that certain communities or certain individuals are actually affected by it, and of course by your means that engaged in transdisciplinary areas, or if that is the case, it is actually not fair for PhD students themselves to actually come together to create such community. I think there needs to be a structural changes that needs to happen. I know in some universities in Canada and a lot in North America now, they're gearing their PhD program to be industrial transdisciplinary partnership focused, so that PhD students are actually getting internship before they actually engage in their research topic, so that their research topic sometimes can be created alongside with industrial partners together. Such networks and community needs to have to happen outside of university partnership together. But if that is not possible, if you are a PhD student and there are a group of students that you are willing to do so, there is a way to do it. But maybe I don't want to take the platform for Vinesh and Asma, but if maybe these can be some of the conversation that we can actually collaborate together, how as a PhD students, as a community of practice from Australia and in India, can create such network and communities together to work cross-culturally and transdisciplinarily approach together.
Yeah, no, makes sense, Amy. And Vinesh and Artha, I'll also segue to the next question. So feel free to comment on any or both of the two, which is, what are there some common areas of future research collaboration that Australia and India can pursue in these areas which come to your mind, which you'd like to bring to this group? So please, brief comment on this and or the question, Vinesh.
Yeah, I'd be very much interested to talk to anyone. See, I'm very much keen on this idea of, like I've seen this in my lifetime as a teacher, as a researcher and university academic, the importance of breaking the silos. So if there's anyone out there who's keen on exploring ways, I mean, I think the stories that we have picked up in Papua New Guinea, and I've worked in a number of other developing countries. And also we have some very good examples. Like, for example, what Esther said about, looking at ethical issues and so on. I think when we look at STEM, when we look at this interconnectedness, whatever we do, we have to think big. What does this mean? What does this mean when we put this in the context of our planet, for example? Look at sustainability. Not everything that we do, we have to strike the right balance between economic need and economic greed. I think that far too many times all we want to do is make money. Making money isn't everything. I think that's something that we have to look after our planet. And that's where I think looking at the work that's being done, primary school, high school, kindergarten, how does it matter? I'm using this particular material to make this particular product. Well, how does it impact? What happens to the product after we've finished using it? Thinking bigger, thinking broader. Where have things come from that are in front of us? Where will it go? So I would really want to have conversations with anyone who wants to explore the idea of, making things happen in schools. I believe that when we look at integration, we aren't diluting curriculum. We aren't sort of taking students away from learning definitions. But what happens is that when they learn a definition and actually apply it in context, it means a lot. All of a sudden, if you're talking about force, it's not just learning what a force is, but you can see it do something, So that's what I'd like to say. I'm mindful of the time as well. As I said, please feel free to contact me, and I'd be quite happy to keep the conversation going.
Thanks, Vinesh. After anything from you on future research collaboration?
Yes, definitely. So I was just thinking that I have done this study in India, and I have collected this data from the students and the teachers in India. So it would be interesting to learn about the views of teachers and students in Australia. How do they feel about these issues? And what are the similarities? What are the differences? And where do they struggle? And what kind of textbooks they have? Which is kind of framing their ideas and opinions about things. So I think that could be done in both the countries' contexts.
No, great idea, Arthur. Let me just
Thank you.
quickly sum up this very exciting discussion which had of some of the takebacks I had. So I'll just list them down, right? The first one was context is very, very important, and basing science education in context is one of the key features which we need. Vinay's point about winning the teachers, right? So we just need to win the teachers. That's the starting point of making this happen. Bringing the actors together and using methods, scientific methods to bring these actors together is something which needs to happen a lot more. Digital literacy, and I like the phrase Amy used, global digital citizens. Creating them is very important, and we have to be very mindful that we're not only talking about imparting professional skills. This means much more than imparting skills which will make their work more efficient, but it's how to live and operate in a digitally connected world where a lot of information which comes to you is digital, through digital medium. And then the very important point around ethics, which I think is going to be becoming more and more important. Right? Honestly, we have become more and more clueless about it because of the speed of technology and things which technology can do today, which it couldn't do probably 2 years back. So the catch up between these two communities of ethics and those two science, that needs to be deeply, deeply accelerated. Per se, if one could do a thought experiment that if Kant was living in this age, how would he have thought about what's happening, right? And there may be need of many new Kants because the way the world works has changed. With that, I'd like to thank all my panelists for this really insightful discussion. I think the research opportunities are immense for future. We are still, it's just the tip of the iceberg which we are talking about. This is a new area which is slowly getting into practice. As it gets more and more adopted, it will create more and more avenues for research and also evaluation of how these things are working. Thank you all for spending time with us this morning. And thanks, Vinesh, Amy, and Asta, and the team at the Australia India Education Researchers Forum. Thank you. Have a great day.
Thank you so much, Varun. Yeah. and the team.
Yeah.
Thank you.